I've spent 8 months teaching people how to lie to themselves, and I'm exceptional at it. The simulation I'm building right now is a coastal Portuguese town at sunset, the kind of place where the light turns everything amber and people believe they're watching something sacred instead of just atmospheric scattering doing its job. I've rendered the cobblestones individually, each one slightly different, because the human subconscious notices patterns even when the conscious mind doesn't. The trick to a convincing illusion isn't perfection, it's strategic imperfection. A crack here, a loose tile there, a window shutter that hangs at a 5-degree cant. Reality is sloppy, so my simulations have to be sloppy too, but in exactly the right ways. I'm alone in the sanctuary, which is what we call the psychological support module buried in the northeast corner of Sidonia Base. The official designation is Cognitive Environment Suite, but nobody uses that except Commander Stark when he's filing reports. The room is small, designed for one person to monitor the 12 immersion pods arranged in a circle like numbers on a clock face. Each pod is a coffin-sized capsule where a crew member can lie down, close their eyes, and let the neural interface convince their brain they're somewhere, anywhere, other than 300 million kilometers from Earth, locked inside a pressurized habitat on a frozen desert that wants them dead. I adjust the color temperature of the simulated sunset, dropping it 0.5 degree warmer. The light needs to feel nostalgic, not real. That's the difference between my work and a photograph. A photograph shows you what was there. I show you what you wish had been there. The pod diagnostic panel blinks at me from the workstation screen. I've been seeing errors for the past week. Minor rendering delays, texture pop-in issues, moments where the simulation stutters for a fraction of a second before correcting itself. Nothing dangerous, nothing that would hurt anyone. But imperfect. An imperfection bothers me the way a splinter bothers your thumb even when you can't see it anymore. I tap through the error logs, scanning lines of code that describe the mathematical architecture of artificial experience. The delays are in the visual cortex interface, the part of the system that convinces your brain you're seeing something that isn't there. The pattern doesn't make sense. These aren't hardware failures. The connection strength is fine, the neural mapping is clean. It's like the system is hesitating, double-checking its own work before committing to the render. My father used to do that. He'd tell me a story about the places we'd go, the adventures waiting for us just around the corner. But halfway through, he'd pause and change a detail, adjusting the lie until it felt more believable. By the time I was 10, I could tell when he was about to correct himself. There'd be this tiny moment of silence where you could feel him calculating whether the story was holding up under its own weight. I closed the diagnostic panel without fixing anything. The errors aren't critical, and I've learned that sometimes you have to accept a certain amount of chaos in the system. Perfection is a moving target. My personal terminal chimes, a direct message from the command hub, which means Stark wants something. The message is 8 words. Briefing in Conference A, 15 minutes, attendance mandatory. I save the Portuguese sunset and lock the sanctuary behind me. The corridor outside is narrow, the walls lined with supply lockers and ventilation panels. Sidonia Base was built by robots before we arrived, assembled from prefabricated modules dropped from orbit and welded together by machines that didn't care about aesthetics. Every surface is flat, functional, and slightly too close together. The designers calculated the minimum acceptable space for human habitation and then subtracted 10% to save on shipping weight. I passed 2 technicians heading the opposite direction, both wearing the grey maintenance coveralls that mark them as part of the engineering rotation. One of them nods at me. I don't know his name. There are 40 people on Sidonia, and I've made it a point to learn as few of their names as possible. It's easier that way. Caring about people means caring when they inevitably disappoint you. Conference A is a glorified closet with a table and 6 chairs. By the time I arrive, 4 of the chairs are already occupied. Commander Robert Stark sits at the head of the table, His posture exactly what you'd expect from someone who learned to sit in a military academy 30 years ago. His flight suit is crisp, vacuum-pressed on the dry rig, despite the fact that we're living in a habitat where water is rationed and laundry is a luxury. He has the build of someone who grew up doing physical labor, all compact efficiency and weathered hands. The scar on his left hand, the one he rubs when he's forcing himself to sound certain, is visible above the edge of his tablet screen. To his right is Dr. Miles Ramsey, our xenogeologist, which is a fancy title for someone who studies rocks that might once have been touched by things that aren't human. Ramsey has the manic energy of a man who won the lottery and can't stop checking his ticket to make sure it's real. He's 43 but moves like he's 20, always gesturing, always leaning forward, always 2 seconds away from standing up and pacing. Right now he's holding a small dark object in his hand, rolling it between his fingers. His worry stone. He found it on a survey mission 2 months ago, some kind of meteor fragment with an unusual density, and he carries it everywhere like a gambler carries a lucky coin. Dr. Alistair Peck sits across from Ramsey, his tablet open in front of him, his stylus moving in small, precise motions as he takes notes on something. Peck is our psychologist, though psychologist doesn't really capture what he does. He's more like a behavioral engineer, the man who wrote the book. Literally wrote the book, it's called The Peck Method, on how to condition people to survive long-duration isolation. He's in his mid-50s, looks like he walked out of a Harvard faculty lounge, circa 1985, and has a habit of adjusting his collar whenever someone says something he finds intellectually inadequate. He's adjusting it now, which means Ramsey has been talking. The fourth person is Arthur Callahan, the only person on this base I'd call a friend if I believed in that kind of thing. Callahan is our senior systems engineer, which means he's responsible for keeping the life support systems running, the power grid stable, and the walls from developing cracks that would let Mars kill us all in about 90 seconds. He's 51, built like a man who spent his 20s lifting heavy objects in places without proper gravity, and he has the kind of face that makes you think of old-fashioned mechanics who could fix anything with a wrench and some improvised profanity. He's the only person on base who treats my job like it's actually important instead of a luxury we can't afford. Stark looks up as I enter. "Jules, have a seat." I take the empty chair next to Callahan. The sixth chair remains empty. We're still waiting for someone. "I'll begin without Okafor," Stark says, tapping his tablet. "He's running final checks on the rover. We're on a schedule." Ramsey can't contain himself. "Is this about Object 01? Did the final scans come back?" Object 01 is what we've been calling the alien vessel we discovered 6 weeks ago, buried in the Martian regolith about 40 kilometers northwest of Sidonia. It's not exactly buried. More like it's settled into the sand over the course of 1,000,000 years and let Mars partially swallow it. We found it during a routine geological survey, a perfect triangular silhouette just barely visible beneath a thin layer of dust. The shape was too precise to be natural. Ramsey nearly had a heart attack when the ground-penetrating radar came back showing a hollow interior. "The scans are complete," Stark says. "The object is structurally sound. No radiation above background levels, no biological contaminants detected. The atmospheric sensors confirm the interior has been in vacuum for approximately 1,000,000 years, give or take 100,000, based on cosmogenic isotope ratios and sputtering on exposed surfaces." Ramsey leans forward so far he's practically climbing onto the table. "So we're cleared for entry." "The safety board approved the EVA this morning," Stark says. "We go in tomorrow at 0900. The entry team will be myself, Callahan, Ramsey, Okafor, Kim, and Jules." I blink. "You want me on the entry team?" Stark's expression doesn't change. "Your psychological profile indicates high stress tolerance and strong observational skills. The board decided we need someone who can analyze the environment from a human factors perspective. What he means is, we need someone who can look at an alien room and figure out if it's going to make people lose their minds. That's my job in a sentence. Professional reality tester." Peck clears his throat. "Commander, I should note that placing Mr. Jules in a high-stress environment may be inadvisable. His role here is to manage cognitive resilience through controlled immersion therapy, not to serve as a field analyst. Noted, Stark says, which is his way of saying he doesn't care. Jules is on the team. Kim will handle technical documentation, Callahan will manage equipment integrity, and Ramsey is our subject matter expert. Okafor pilots the rover. I maintain command oversight. Ramsey is vibrating with barely suppressed excitement. This is extraordinary. Do you understand what we're about to do? We're going to be the first human beings to set foot inside a vessel built by an alien intelligence. The first to see their architecture, their engineering, their empty derelict. Stark interrupts. Let's maintain perspective. This is a survey mission. We document, we collect samples if safe to do so, and we leave. We're not making first contact. We're examining a fossil. But Ramsey isn't listening. He's already somewhere else, imagining the alien minds that built Object 01, the civilization that launched it into the black and let it drift for 1 million years until it fell into Mars's gravity well and settled into the sand, like a message in a bottle. Peck makes another note on his tablet. I'll prepare a pre-mission psychological evaluation for the entry team. Standard protocol for high-stress scenarios. Appreciate it, Stark says in a tone that makes it clear he doesn't. The briefing continues for another 20 minutes. Equipment checklists, communication protocols, contingency plans for about 15 different ways we could die. Stark runs through it all with the methodical precision of someone who's done this before, who's seen missions go wrong and learned to check every variable twice. I watch his hand drift to the scar on his knuckle 3 separate times. Whatever happened to give him that scar, it's the reason he's like this now. Rigid, by the book, unable to tolerate ambiguity. When the briefing ends, everyone files out except Callahan and me. He waits until the door closes, then turns to me. You worried? He asks. About what? About going into an alien ship that's been sitting in the dark for 1 million years. I think about it. I'm more worried about the pods. Callahan raises an eyebrow. The glitches you mentioned. They're getting worse. Nothing critical, but the pattern bothers me. It's like the system is checking its work twice before committing to the render. Could be a hardware issue. Want me to take a look? I ran diagnostics. The hardware is fine. It's something in the interface logic, the part that translates the simulation data into neural input. I can't find the source. Callahan nods slowly. You think it's a software bug? I think it's something that doesn't fit the expected behavior pattern, which means either I wrote broken code or something else is happening that I don't understand yet. You want to postpone the EVA? Run more tests on the pods first. I consider it for about half a second. No, the pods can wait. Stark's right, we're on a schedule. We've been on Mars for 8 months. We've got 16 months left before the return window opens. And if we're going to make this mission worth the $40 billion it cost to get us here, we need to bring back something more than rock samples. Callahan grins. That's unusually pragmatic for you. I have my moments. He stands, stretching. Get some rest tonight. Tomorrow we go see what the neighbors left behind. After he leaves, I sit alone in Conference A for a few minutes, thinking about the Portuguese sunset still waiting in the sanctuary's memory, half finished. I think about my father's stories, the way he'd pause mid-sentence to adjust a detail, making the lie just a little more believable. I think about the rendering errors in the pods, the system hesitating before showing you something that isn't there. Then I get up and go back to my quarters to sleep, because tomorrow we're going to walk into something 1 million years old, and I want to be sharp enough to notice when reality stops making sense. The next morning, I suit up in the EVA prep room alongside the rest of the entry team. The Martian pressure suits are bulky, over-engineered things designed to keep you alive in an environment with less than 1% of Earth's atmospheric pressure and temperatures that drop to -80 at night. The suit is essentially a personal habitat, a tiny bubble of survivable conditions wrapped around your body. Putting one on takes 15 minutes and requires a checklist longer than most grocery lists. Kim, our technical specialist, is already suited up, running final checks on the documentation equipment we'll be carrying. He's 27, recruited straight out of MIT's robotics program, and he has the nervous energy of someone who's never quite convinced he belongs in the room with the adults. Right now, he's triple-checking a camera rig that's already been checked by 2 other people. Okafor, our pilot, is the calmest person I've ever met. He's 40, served in the Nigerian Air Force before joining the civilian space program, and he has the kind of unshakable confidence that comes from having successfully landed aircraft that were actively on fire. He's checking his suit seals with the methodical efficiency of someone who's done this 100 times. Ramsey is practically bouncing. Even in a pressure suit, he manages to convey manic excitement. 40 kilometers, he says to anyone who'll listen. 40 kilometers between us and the most significant discovery in human history. 40 kilometers between us and an old wreck, Stark corrects. Let's maintain realistic expectations. Callahan catches my eye and makes a subtle gesture that I interpret as, here we go. I nod. The rover trip takes 3.5 hours. Mars doesn't allow for speed. The terrain is too unpredictable, too full of rocks and unexpected slopes that could flip a vehicle if you're not careful. Okafor pilots us northwest, following the nav beacons and orbital relay fixes that mark Object 01's location. Through the rover's front viewport, I watch the Martian landscape roll past, all rust-colored sand and dark volcanic rock under a sky the color of butterscotch. Nobody talks much during the drive. Ramsey tries a few times to start a conversation about xenological paradigms, but Stark shuts him down with monosyllabic responses. Eventually, even Ramsey gives up and just stares out the window, his worry stone clutched in his gloved hand. When we finally arrive, Object 01 is exactly as unimpressive as I remember from the survey photos. It's a triangular structure, equilateral, each side about 40 meters long, jutting out of the sand at a slight angle. The visible portion is maybe 5 meters tall, but the ground-penetrating radar suggests there's another 15 meters buried beneath the surface. The material looks like metal, but the spectrographic analysis came back inconclusive. It's not steel, not aluminum, not any alloy in our database. It's something else. Something with a molecular structure that doesn't match anything we've seen before. The surface is perfectly smooth. No seams, no welds, no manufacturing marks. It looks like it was grown rather than built, like someone convinced matter to arrange itself into this specific shape and then walked away. Okafor parks the rover 30 meters from the structure. End of the line, he says. We disembark in order. Stark first, then Callahan, then me, Ramsey, Kim, and Okafor. Walking in a Martian pressure suit is like trying to walk while wearing a sleeping bag filled with concrete. Every step is deliberate, carefully weighted. Stark's voice comes through my helmet comm. Sound off, radio check. We each respond in turn, confirming our comm systems are working. Callahan, status on equipment. Callahan has already deployed a portable sensor array, a tripod-mounted device that's scanning Object 01 for any changes since the last survey. All readings nominal. Ramsey, your assessment. Ramsey is approaching the structure slowly, his head tilted back to take in the full height of the visible portion. The geometry is intentional. This isn't a natural formation or accidental debris. Someone built this and placed it here deliberately. Jewel? I'm studying the surface, looking for anything that might indicate function or purpose. No visible interface, no markings, no obvious entry point. If there's a door, it's not advertising itself. Then we find it, Stark says. We spend the next 20 minutes circling Object 01, scanning every centimeter of the exposed surface. Kim documents everything with his camera rig, capturing high-resolution images from every angle. Okafor mans the rover, ready to move in if we need emergency extraction. The rest of us search for a way inside. It's Ramsey who finds it. He's on the northwest face of the structure, running his gloved hand along the surface, when he stops. Here, There's something here. We converge on his position. At first I don't see anything, just the same smooth, featureless surface we've been looking at for the past hour. But then Ramsey places his hand flat against the material, and something changes. The surface ripples. That's the only word for it. It's like watching water respond to a dropped stone, except the material is solid metal or whatever it is. The ripple spreads outward from Ramsey's hand, and then a section of the wall simply opens, dilating like a camera aperture, revealing darkness beyond. "Did you do that?" Stark asks. "I touched it," Ramsey says, his voice shaking with excitement. "I just touched it." "It's active," Callahan says. "The structure is active. It responded to contact." Stark is silent for a long moment, thinking. Then, "Kim, document this. Callahan, bring the portable lights. We're going in." "Commander," I say, maybe we should what? Come back tomorrow? We're already here, we're already suited, and the door is already open." We proceed. He's right. Technically. We have all the safety protocols in place, all the equipment we need, and every scan says there's no immediate danger. But something about the way the door opened bothers me. It was too smooth, too responsive. It didn't feel like an automatic system activating. It felt like someone answering a knock. Callahan distributes the portable lights, handheld units that clip to our suit harnesses and project a wide cone of white illumination. Stark goes first, stepping through the triangular opening with his light raised. Callahan follows, then me, then Ramsey, then Kim. Okafor stays with the rover, maintaining an open comlink. The interior is vast. The lights barely reach the far wall, which I estimate is at least 30 meters away. The ceiling is high, maybe 10 meters, perfectly flat and featureless. The floor is the same material as the exterior, smooth and seamless. "Empty," Stark says. "Completely empty." But he's wrong. It's not empty. There's something here, something I can't quite identify. Not an object, not a presence, but a quality. The space feels wrong in a way I can't articulate. I take a few steps forward, my light sweeping across the floor. That's when I notice it. The acoustics are wrong. Even through the suit's external mics, my footsteps should echo in a space this large, but they don't. The sound falls flat, dies immediately, like the walls are swallowing it. "Stark," I say. "The acoustics." And that's when everything stops. There's no sensation, no warning. One moment I'm standing in the alien vessel, about to explain what I'm hearing. The next moment, I'm not. I open my eyes. I'm in the mess hall on Cydonia Base, sitting at one of the long tables. My pressure suit is gone. I'm wearing my standard duty uniform. There's a coffee mug in front of me, steam rising in a thin vertical line. The rest of the team is here. Stark, Callahan, Ramsey, Kim, Okafor. All of them looking just as confused as I feel. "What just happened?" Kim asks. Stark stands, his hand moving instinctively to his comm unit, but the gesture stops halfway. We're not wearing comms, we're not wearing suits, we're just here. "Report," Stark says. "Is anyone injured?" We each confirm we're unharmed, physically at least. "How did we get back?" Callahan asks. "I don't remember leaving Object 01. "I don't remember anything after entering," Ramsey says. "We went in. Jules mentioned something about acoustics, and then..." He stops because there's no "and then." There's just a discontinuity, a hard cut from one moment to the next. I look down at the coffee mug. The steam is still rising, that same thin vertical line. I watch it for 5 seconds, 10 seconds. The pattern doesn't change. It's rising and falling in exactly the same way, a 3-second loop repeating endlessly. I don't say anything yet. I'm watching, analyzing, looking for other evidence. Stark is organizing, taking command. This could be exposure to an unknown agent, something in the air inside Object 01. "Peck, you need to..." "Peck isn't here," Callahan points out. "This is just the entry team." Then we go to medical. Get scanned, run blood work, make sure we're not contaminated with something that's... "Commander," I interrupt. "Look at the wall behind Ramsey." There's a display panel mounted on the wall, showing the current time and atmospheric conditions inside the base. As I speak, the panel flickers. Just once, just for a single frame. But I saw it. A momentary distortion, like a video file skipping. "Did you see that?" I ask. "See what?" Stark says. "The panel. It flickered. Jules, we need to focus on—" "Watch the steam," I say, pointing at my coffee mug. "Watch it for 30 seconds. Don't look away." They humor me, all of them watching the steam rise from my untouched coffee. After about 15 seconds, Callahan says, "It's looping. The pattern is repeating exactly." "That's not possible," Kim says. "Steam is chaotic. It can't repeat exactly." "Unless it's not steam," I say. "Unless it's a render." Ramsey's eyes go wide. "You think we're still in Object 01? "I think we never left," I say. "I think we're inside something that's showing us this." I gesture at the mess hall, at the coffee, at all of it. "This isn't Cydonia. This is a simulation." Stark's hand moves to the scar on his knuckle, rubbing it. "You're suggesting we're experiencing a mass hallucination triggered by—" "I'm not suggesting anything," I say. "I'm observing. And what I'm observing is a coffee mug producing physically impossible steam and a display panel that glitches like a bad video file." "Peck would say you're seeing patterns where there aren't any," Stark says, but his voice lacks conviction. He's rubbing that scar harder now. "Then let's test it," Callahan says. "If this is Cydonia, there should be other people here. 40 crew members. Where are they?" We leave the mess hall and move through the corridors. The base is completely empty. Every room we check is vacant. There's no one else here. "They could be on a different rotation," Kim offers, but he doesn't sound convinced. We end up in the command hub, the nerve center of Cydonia Base. Stark sits at the primary console and tries to access the system logs. The screen displays information, shows timestamps and status reports, but when I look over his shoulder, I notice something. "The timestamps don't make sense," I say. "Look at the sequence. We entered Object 01 at 0900. According to this, it's currently 0915. We've been walking around the base for at least 20 minutes. Stark stares at the screen. Then he pulls out his personal log, the leather-bound notebook he keeps for handwritten records. He flips through the pages, comparing what he wrote this morning with what he's reading on the screen. His face goes pale. "This is wrong. The timestamps are impossible. Because this isn't real," I say. "This is something else. Something inside Object 01. Ramsey is standing by the viewport, looking out at the Martian landscape. "If you're right," he says slowly, "if this is some kind of constructed environment, then what's the purpose? Why show us Cydonia? Why not just kill us?" "Maybe killing isn't the goal," I say. "Maybe the goal is something else." Stark stands, his posture rigid. "All right, just assuming your theory is correct, what do we do about it?" "We find the exit," I say, "or we find the flaws in the construction. Something that proves definitively this isn't real. Something undeniable that even you can't rationalize away. And then? And then we figure out how to leave." Stark nods slowly. Callahan, Kim start documenting anomalies. Anything that doesn't match expected behavior. "Ramsey, you're with me. We're going to check the EVA prep room, see if our suits are there. Jules, you do what you do. Look for the brushstrokes." The team disperses. I walk back through the corridors alone, studying everything, looking for the seams in the construction, the places where reality frays at the edges. I find them, small things. A door panel that's slightly the wrong color. A corridor junction where the shadows don't quite align correctly. A viewport showing stars that are in the wrong positions for Mars's latitude. Each flaw is subtle, easy to miss unless you're looking for it. Whoever or whatever built this simulation is good but not perfect. They cut corners, they reused assets, they made compromises to save on computational resources. I'm standing in one of the side corridors, cataloguing a particularly obvious texture repetition on a wall panel when the world cuts to black. One moment I'm standing in the corridor, the next moment I'm standing in a forest. The transition was instantaneous. No fade, no sense of movement, just a hard cut from the Cydonia corridor to here. One moment I was cataloguing a texture error on a wall panel, the next I'm surrounded by trees. The forest is deciduous, which is the first thing that's wrong. Mars doesn't have forests. Mars doesn't have trees. Mars barely has an atmosphere. But here I am, standing on soil that compresses slightly under my boots, looking at oak trees. I think they're oaks, I'm not a botanist, stretching 30 meters into a sky that's blue instead of butterscotch. I can hear voices nearby, shouting. The crew. I move toward the sound and find Callahan about 50 meters away, standing in a small clearing. He sees me and waves, his face a mixture of relief and confusion. "Jules! What the hell just happened?" "I don't know yet," I say, which is only partially true. I have a theory, but theories need evidence. The others converge on the clearing over the next few minutes. Stark arrives first, moving with the controlled urgency of someone trying very hard not to panic. Then Ramsey, then Kim, then Okafor. Everyone is accounted for. Everyone is disoriented. "Sound off," Stark says, falling back on procedure because procedure is the only thing he has left. "Is anyone injured?" We each confirm we're physically intact. Mentally is another question. "Check your equipment," Stark orders. "Comms, tools, anything." We check. We have nothing. No radios, no tablets, no emergency supplies. Just the clothes we're wearing and the boots on our feet. "This is wrong," Okafor says quietly. He's the calmest person I know, and hearing uncertainty in his voice is more unsettling than if Kim had started screaming. "We should have our gear. We should have some kind of equipment." "We should be on Mars," Callahan adds. Stark is processing this, his hand moving to that scar on his knuckle. "All right, we maintain order. First priority is establishing our location and finding a way to contact Cydonia Base. We split into 2 groups, survey the immediate area, reconvene here in 30 minutes. "Commander," I say, "I don't think that's going to help." "What would you suggest, Jules?" "I think we should look for the mistakes." "The what?" "The rendering errors. The places where this, I gesture at the forest, doesn't make sense, the glitches in the construction." Stark stares at me for a long moment. "You still think we're in a simulation?" "I think the evidence is consistent with that theory, yes." "The evidence," Stark repeats. "The evidence is that we're standing in a forest after experiencing some kind of environmental exposure inside an alien structure. The rational explanation is that we're hallucinating, possibly due to contamination." "Then explain the transition," I say. "Explain how we went from Cydonia Base to a forest without any sense of movement or passage of time. Explain why we have no equipment. Explain why none of this follows any logical physical progression." "I can't explain it yet," Stark says. "But jumping to the conclusion that we're trapped inside some kind of alien computer simulation is exactly what happened," Ramsey interrupts. He's been quiet until now, but there's something in his voice that makes everyone turn to look at him. "Julian is right. This is a test. They're testing us." "Who's testing us?" Stark demands. "Whoever built Object 01, Ramsey says, and his voice has that manic edge I recognize from the briefing, the sound of someone who's just had their entire worldview validated. "Don't you see? The vessel isn't a derelict. It's a laboratory. We're the subjects." "That's speculation," Stark says. "So is contamination," I point out. "At least my speculation accounts for the observed phenomena." Kim raises his hand like we're in a classroom. "If this is a simulation, shouldn't there be, I don't know, more obvious signs? Like we'd be able to see pixels or something?" "Not if it's good enough," I say. "A well-constructed virtual environment is indistinguishable from reality if you have sufficient processing power and detailed enough sensory data. But nothing is perfect. There are always compromises, always corners cut to save on resources. We just need to find them." Find them how? Callahan asks. Look for repetition, I say. Look for things that are too perfect or not perfect enough. Look for patterns that shouldn't exist in nature. Stark considers this for several seconds. Finally, he says, Fine, we have 30 minutes. Callahan, Kim, you're with me. We survey north. Ramsey, Okafor, you go south with Jules. Look for anything anomalous. But I want everyone back here in 30 minutes, and then we're making decisions based on what we find, not on speculation. The group split. I head south with Ramsey and Okafor, moving through the trees. Ramsey is practically vibrating with excitement, pulling out his worry stone and rubbing it compulsively. This is extraordinary, he mutters. Absolutely extraordinary. A consciousness mapping system, probably. Analyzing our responses, our decision-making processes. The implications are staggering. Focus, I say. We need evidence, not theories. But the theory informs what evidence we're looking for. Ramsey argues. If this is a test environment, then it's designed to stress us, to push us towards specific responses, which means we need to not give it what it wants. Okafor interrupts. If something is testing us, we should probably consider not cooperating. Or we cooperate intelligently, Ramsey says. We communicate. We show we understand what's happening. Maybe that's the test, recognizing the nature of the experiment. I'm only half listening to them. I'm studying the trees, the ground, the way light filters through the canopy. I'm looking for the seams. It takes me 15 minutes to find one. There's a tree about 20 meters off our path, a large oak with a branch that's broken and hanging at a sharp angle. The break is fresh, the exposed wood still pale. I memorize the shape, the angle of the break, the way the splinters radiate outward, the specific curve of the damaged limb. Then I keep walking, and 10 minutes later, I see it again. Different tree, same branch. The break is identical. Not similar, not roughly the same. Identical down to the pattern of the splinters, the exact angle of the hang, the precise color gradient of the exposed wood. I stop walking. Ramsey, come look at this. He approaches, Okafor following close behind. I point at the broken branch, then at the tree we passed earlier, barely visible through the forest. That tree over there. Look at the branch. Ramsey looks. His eyes go wide. It's the same. Exactly the same, I confirm. Which means this isn't a forest. It's a procedurally generated environment using reusable assets. Whoever built this, whatever built this, used the same branch model twice. Asset reuse, Okafor says slowly, like in a video game. Like in any simulation where you need to fill a large space with limited processing power, I say. You create a library of objects and reuse them in different configurations. Most people won't notice, but if you look carefully enough, you see the repetition. Ramsey is already pulling out his worry stone, rolling it between his fingers. Julian, you see it too. You understand what this means. We're in conversation with them. They're trying to communicate. They're trying to study us, I correct. There's a difference. But why? Okafor asks. Why go through all this? If they wanted to study us, why not just scan our brains while we were unconscious? Why create all this? Because they're not interested in our brains, I say. They're interested in our behavior, our choices. You can't measure those with a passive scan. You need to put the subject in a situation and see what they do. We return to the clearing. Stark's group is already there, waiting. The commander looks impatient. Report, he says. We found a glitch, I say, a repeated asset, proof that this environment isn't natural. I explain the broken branch, the identical geometry. Callahan nods slowly. He understands the significance immediately. Kim looks uncertain. Stark's expression is unreadable. That's your evidence? He says finally. 2 similar tree branches. Not similar, I insist. Identical. Exact duplicates down to the splinter pattern. Which could be a natural coincidence, Stark says. Trees break in predictable ways based on stress patterns. Two branches subjected to similar forces could break identically. The probability of that is non-zero, Stark interrupts. I'm not saying you're wrong, Jules. I'm saying you're not proven right. And until we have definitive proof, we proceed on the assumption that we're experiencing some kind of shared contamination-induced hallucination, not that we've been kidnapped by an alien computer. Commander, Ramsey says, his voice urgent. With respect, the evidence supports Julian's interpretation. The discontinuity, the missing equipment, the impossible transition from Mars to Earth. We don't know we're on Earth, Stark says. We don't know where we are. That's the problem. We're operating with incomplete information, and making assumptions based on incomplete information gets people killed. The argument continues for another 5 minutes. Ramsey and me on one side, Stark on the other, Callahan and the rest staying carefully neutral. It's not going anywhere. Stark has already decided what he believes, and no amount of evidence is going to change his mind until something forces him to. That's when we hear the sound. It's coming from deeper in the forest, a high-pitched keen that rises and falls in a pattern that's almost musical. It doesn't sound like any animal I've ever heard. It sounds synthetic, like an audio file designed to trigger primal fear. Defensive formation, Stark orders immediately. Watch all approaches. We form up, but it's pointless. We have no weapons, no tools. If something hostile is coming, we're defenseless. The sound gets closer. Then we see them. They're moving through the trees, low to the ground, and at first I can't process what I'm looking at. They're quadrupedal, roughly the size of large dogs, but the proportions are wrong. The legs are too long, the head's too angular, the movement too smooth. They're covered in something that looks like dark fur, but it catches the light wrong, reflecting slightly where it shouldn't. What are those? Kim whispers. I don't know, Stark says. But everyone stay calm. No sudden movements. There are 6 of them, forming a loose circle around our position. They're not attacking yet, just watching us with eyes that don't quite focus correctly. The movements are gorgeous, fluid and precise, each step perfectly placed. Too perfect. I watch one of them step forward, its paw coming down on a rock. The paw goes through the rock for just a fraction of a second, a single frame of clipping before the collision detection corrects and the paw rests on top of the stone. They're not real, I say quietly. They look pretty damn real to me, Okafor says. Watch the one on the left. Watch how it moves. The animations are perfect, but the physics isn't quite right. It's clipping through environmental objects. As if it heard me, the creature on the left lunges. It covers the distance between us in 2 bounds, impossibly fast, and goes for Kim. He tries to dodge, but it's too quick. It hits him in the chest, and they both go down, Kim screaming. The others react immediately. Callahan grabs Kim and tries to pull him away. Stark kicks at the creature. His boot connects and it tumbles backward. More of them are moving in now, coordinated, relentless. It's chaos. Okafor is wrestling with one of the creatures, his hands around what passes for its throat. Ramsey is on the ground, curled in a defensive position, while another creature circles him. Stark is shouting orders that nobody can follow because there's no formation. No plan that works when you're unarmed against 6 predators that move like they're running on a game engine. Kim is bleeding. The wound on his chest is deep, ragged, and absolutely convincing. The pain on his face is real. If this is a simulation, it's one that doesn't care about our comfort. I'm watching all of it with a strange detachment, my mind cataloguing details. The creatures move in loops, not exact loops, but patterns that repeat with slight variations. Their attack patterns are sophisticated but predictable once you see them twice. And the blood, Kim's blood, is spreading on the ground in a pattern that's too symmetrical, radiating outward in a perfect circle that natural fluid dynamics wouldn't produce. The blood pattern, I say to no one in particular. It's wrong. Nobody hears me. They're all too busy trying not to die. Then one of the creatures lunges at me, and I don't have time to analyze anymore. I throw myself sideways, hit the ground hard, roll, and come up with my hands raised defensively. The creature is already turning for another pass, its movements so smooth they look choreographed. It leaps. I drop flat, and it sails over me, landing in a crouch that transitions immediately into another attack stance. It's learning, adapting, adjusting its patterns based on our responses. We're not going to win this fight. Not with our bare hands against creatures that might not even be bound by the normal rules of biology. I'm preparing to take another hit when everything stops. The creatures freeze mid-motion, suspended like video on pause. Then they dissolve, not violently, not dramatically, just fade smoothly out of existence over the course of 2 seconds. The forest is suddenly quiet, empty. What? Callahan starts, but he doesn't finish the sentence. The world cuts to black. No warning, no fade. Just a hard transition to nothing, and then I'm opening my eyes and I'm somewhere else entirely. I'm in my childhood apartment, the one-bedroom place in Chicago where I grew up, with the water-stained ceiling and the windows that never quite closed all the way. I know this place. I haven't thought about it in years, have actively tried not to think about it, but I know every detail. I'm standing in the kitchen, which is barely large enough for 2 people to stand in at once. The counters are yellow laminate from the 70s, chipped at the edges. The refrigerator hums at a frequency that used to put me to sleep when I was small. My father is at the stove, cooking eggs. He's younger than I remember him, maybe 40, with dark hair that's just starting to grey at the temples. He's wearing the blue flannel shirt he always wore on weekends, the one with the frayed cuffs. He turns and sees me, and his face lights up with a smile I haven't seen in decades. "Jules," he says. "Morning, kid. Big day today." I can't speak. My throat is closed up, some combination of shock and old grief choking off any response. "You remember, right?" He continues, turning back to the eggs. "We're finally going to see them. The Northern Lights. I've got the car all packed, full tank of gas, and I checked the weather. It's going to be perfect. Clear skies all the way to Minnesota. The Aurora trip. The promise he made when I was 12. The trip we never took because the money he said he'd saved didn't exist. I found him passed out on the couch that night, the Aurora Fund envelope torn open and empty, spent on God knows what. But this version of him is sober, clear-eyed, animated with genuine excitement. This version of him is the man he always promised he'd be, right before he failed. "I know I've let you down before," he says. And now he's looking at me directly, and the expression on his face is so earnest it physically hurts to see. But not this time. I swear to you, Jules, this time it's real. We're going to see those lights together. The sails of celestial ships, the whispers of the cosmos. Everything I promised you. I realize my hands are shaking. This is the cruelest thing the simulation could have shown me. Not a monster, not a threat, but this. My father, redeemed. The childhood I should have had, crystallized in a single, perfect moment. I force myself to look around the apartment, searching for the flaw. There has to be a flaw. This isn't real. This is just data pulled from my memories and reconstructed, and no reconstruction is perfect. It takes me 30 seconds to find it. Through the kitchen window, I can see the street outside. There's a car driving past, a green sedan with a dent in the rear bumper. I watch it pass from left to right, moving at a steady speed. Then, 45 seconds later, the same car passes again. Same color, same dent, same speed, same trajectory. And then, another minute later, it passes a third time. Asset reuse. The same model repeated on a loop because the simulation is focused on the interior, on my father and me, and it's cutting corners on the background details. I look back at my father. He's plating the eggs now, humming softly to himself, completely unaware that he's not real. "This isn't happening," I say quietly. He looks up, confused. "What's not happening?" This, you, the Aurora trip. None of it's real. His smile falters. Jules, I know you've lost faith in me and I understand why, but I promise this time, you're not my father, I say. And the words feel like gravel in my throat. You're a simulation, a construct, something pulling data from my memories and using it to... I stop. To test me, to see what I'll do. The man who looks like my father sets down the plate, his expression shifting from confusion to concern. Son, maybe you should sit down. You don't look well. I'm not sitting down. I'm leaving. You can't leave, he says, and his voice is gentle, patient. The car's not ready yet. We need to eat breakfast first, pack a few more things and then we'll go. Together, like I promised. The temptation is enormous. Part of me, a large part, wants to accept this, wants to sit down, eat the eggs, get in the car, and spend a perfect day with the father I never had. The simulation is offering me closure, offering me the resolution to the defining trauma of my childhood, wrapped in warm flannel and sunny skies. All I have to do is believe the lie. I can't, I say. I'm sorry, but I can't. His face crumples with hurt, and it's so genuine, so perfectly rendered, that I almost step forward to comfort him. But I catch myself. You're not real, I repeat, more for my own benefit than his. I want to leave. I want out. Jules, he says, and his voice cracks. Please, we can finally do this. We can finally see them together. Don't you want that? I close my eyes. Of course I want it, but wanting it doesn't make it real. And I'm done with beautiful lies. The apartment remains solid around me. Nothing changes. The simulation isn't letting me go just because I've rejected it. I open my eyes and look directly at where I imagine the observer would be, if this were a stage and not a room. I know what you're doing, I say to the empty air. I know this is a test, and my answer is no. I choose to leave. For a long moment, nothing happens. My father, the thing that looks like my father, just stands there, holding the plate of eggs, his face frozen in an expression of hurt and confusion. Then everything cuts to black again, the same hard transition. When my eyes open, I'm not in the apartment anymore. I'm in a corridor. It looks like Cydonia Base. The same flat walls, the same narrow dimensions, the same industrial functionality. But something's off. The lighting is slightly too warm, and the corridor is too clean. None of the scuff marks and wear patterns that accumulate in a real habitat. The rest of the crew is here. Stark, Callahan, Ramsey, Kim, Okafor. We're all standing in a loose group, looking at each other with varying expressions of shock and exhaustion. That wasn't Mars, Kim says quietly. That was Earth. I was on Earth. I was at my graduation and my parents were there and they were proud of me. I was home, Okafor says, in Lagos, with my daughter. She was laughing. Everyone starts talking at once, comparing experiences. It becomes clear we were all in separate simulations, each one tailored to something personal, something meaningful. The system split us up and ran us through individual tests. Only Stark is silent. He's staring at his hands, at that scar on his knuckle. Then he pulls out his logbook, the leather-bound notebook he keeps for handwritten records, and opens it to the most recent page. This is wrong. What is? Callahan asks. The timestamps, my entries. He holds up the book so we can see. I logged our entry into Object 01 at 0900. I logged our return to Cydonia at 0915. Then I logged our discovery of the corridor anomalies at 0930. He flips a page. Then I logged our arrival in the forest at 0935. So? Kim says. So I'm currently writing an entry about our return to this corridor, and my watch says it's 0940. Stark looks up at us, and for the first time since I've known him, he looks genuinely uncertain. We've experienced 3 completely different environments, spent subjective hours in each one, and according to my log, only 40 minutes have passed. Because time isn't passing, I say. Not in the way you're used to. We're not experiencing these things sequentially. We're being loaded into scenarios, experiencing them and then being reset. The blackouts are transitions between tests. Stark closes his logbook slowly. Then where are we really? Physically? Probably still inside Object 01, our bodies in stasis. Mentally, we're here, wherever here is. Ramsay has been silent until now, but he suddenly speaks up, his voice shaking. They're mapping us. That's what this is. They're running us through high-stress scenarios, recording our responses, building a model of how we think, how we feel, what we fear, what we want. Why? Callahan asks. Because they don't understand consciousness, Ramsay says. They're trying to solve us, to figure out what makes us self. That's a lot of speculation, Stark says, but his voice lacks its usual conviction. It fits the observed data, I point out. Each scenario is different, but they're all designed to stress us in specific ways. The forest tested our survival instincts and group cohesion. The personal simulations tested our emotional attachments and our ability to recognize unreality. It's systematic, it's deliberate. Stark is quiet for a long moment, his hand unconsciously rubbing that scar. Then he looks at me directly. If you're right, if we're trapped inside some kind of alien consciousness mapping system, how do we get out? We find the limits, I say. We find what it can't process, what it can't predict. We make ourselves incomprehensible to it. And if that doesn't work, then we hope it gets bored and lets us go, I say. Or we run out of selves to be mapped and there's nothing left to study. Kim makes a sound like a choked laugh. That's not comforting. I'm not here to comfort you, I say. I'm here to get us out. Callahan steps forward. All right. So what's the plan? How do we fight something that has complete control over what we experience? We look for the glitches, I say. Every simulation has limits. Every render has flaws. We find them, we document them, and we use them to remind ourselves what's real and what isn't. The more we can maintain lucidity across the transitions, the better chance we have of finding an exit. And if there is no exit, Okafor asks. I don't have an answer for that. None of us do. Stark takes a breath, squares his shoulders, and some of his command presence returns. All right, new mission parameters. We document every anomaly. We share information. If anyone spots something that doesn't make sense, you speak up immediately. We keep each other grounded. Agreed, Callahan says. The others nod. And Jules, Stark continues, looking at me. You're our expert on constructed realities. From this point forward, if you say something looks wrong, I'm listening. It's not quite an apology, but it's close. It's Stark admitting he was wrong, which might be the hardest thing he's ever done. Thank you, Commander, I say. We stand there in the fake corridor of the fake base. 6 people trying to hold on to their sanity while reality dissolves and rebuilds itself around us. Somewhere, our real bodies are trapped in preservation pods inside an alien laboratory, 1,000,000 years old. Somewhere, a vast intelligence is cataloguing our fears and desires and choices, trying to solve the equation of consciousness. But we're still here, still aware, still fighting. The world cuts to black again, and when it comes back, everything has changed. We open our eyes in a barracks. Military issue, identical bunks arranged in 2 rows, footlockers at the end of each bed. I recognize the layout immediately because we all trained in places like this before the Mars mission. This is meant to be familiar territory, a baseline scenario using our shared experience. Stark reacts first, moving to the nearest window and looking out. This is Fort Benning, he says, or a version of it, combat training facility. Why would it show us this? Callahan asks. Because it's escalating, I say. The first scenarios were disorienting but relatively safe. Now it's testing something else. Probably our ability to function under combat conditions. Ramsay is already examining the room, running his hands along the walls, searching for anomalies. The details are excellent, he says. I can see wear patterns on the floor where people have walked, scratches on the bed frames. It's learning to hide the seams better. There's gear laid out on the bunks, combat fatigues, tactical vests, boots, and weapons, rifles of a type I don't recognize, sleek black things with no visible ammunition ports or ejection mechanisms. Stark picks one up, examining it with professional efficiency. This isn't standard issue, he says. The balance is wrong. No magazine well, no charging handle, no safety selector. He turns it over in his hands. I don't know what this fires. Maybe we're not supposed to fire it, Okafor suggests. Maybe it's a prop. Or maybe it fires something other than bullets, I say. Kim has picked up one of the rifles too, pointing it at the far wall with his finger carefully away from the trigger. There's a display here, he says, tapping a small screen mounted above the grip. It shows emotional states, fear, anger, joy, grief, rage, like a selection menu. Let me see that, Stark says, taking the weapon from Kim. He studies the display, his expression darkening. This is a psychological weapon. It doesn't fire projectiles, it fires emotional states. That's insane, Callahan says. That's the point, I say. It's a paradox. We're in a military scenario, but the tools don't match the context. The system is testing how we adapt when our training doesn't apply. As if on cue, an alarm starts. A low, repeating tone that pulses through the barracks. Red lights begin cycling in the corners of the room, the universal signal for imminent threat. Stark's training takes over immediately. Gear up, full kit, we move as a unit. Callahan, you're on point. Okafor, rear guard. Kim, stay in the middle. Ramsey, Jules, you're with me. We dress quickly, pulling on the unfamiliar combat fatigues. They fit perfectly, which is another small detail that shouldn't be possible. 6 different body types, 6 sets of clothes that fit exactly right. Asset customization, rendered on the fly. The alarm continues its steady pulse. Stark checks his weapon one more time, then moves to the door. Rules of engagement. We don't fire unless fired upon. We assess threats before engaging. We maintain formation. Clear. Everyone nods. Stark opens the door. The corridor beyond is standard military construction. Concrete walls painted institutional beige. Doors at regular intervals marked with stenciled numbers. But at the far end, maybe 50 meters away, there are figures. 6 of them, moving toward us in a loose formation. Contact, Stark says quietly. Unknown hostiles. 50 meters. Advancing. Hold position. We hold. The figures get closer, and I can see they're wearing identical fatigues to ours, carrying the same strange weapons. But their movements are wrong, too synchronized, too precise. They're walking in perfect lockstep, like soldiers in a parade formation, not combat troops. Commander, I say, they're not moving tactically. They're moving like animations. Noted, Stark says, but we treat them as threats until proven otherwise. The figures stop at 30 meters. Then one of them raises its weapon and fires. There's no sound of a gunshot, no muzzle flash. A pulse of light, red, angry, that travels down the corridor like a visible wave. It hits Callahan first, and he staggers backward, dropping his rifle. Contact! Stark shouts, but Callahan is already on his knees, his hands clutching his head. It's fear, Callahan gasps. Pure fear. I can't think through it. The hostile figures fire again, a coordinated volley. This time the pulses hit Okafor and Kim. Okafor goes rigid, his eyes wide, frozen in place. Kim starts laughing, high, manic laughter that echoes down the corridor. Return fire! Stark orders, but I grab his arm. Wait, look at what's happening. They're not killing us. They're manipulating our emotional states. This is a test of psychological warfare, not physical combat. Then what do you suggest? Stark demands. Don't engage on their terms. Don't use the weapons the way they expect us to. But Stark is already raising his rifle, his finger moving to the trigger. His military training is too ingrained, too automatic. He selects Rage from the menu and fires. The pulse hits one of the hostile figure's dead center. It staggers, then straightens, and suddenly it's moving differently, faster, more aggressive, less coordinated. It charges at us, screaming, and the sound is wrong, synthetic, like an audio file of rage played at slightly the wrong pitch. We retreat into the barracks, using the bunks as cover. The hostile figures follow, pouring through the door. They're firing constantly now, random emotional pulses filling the room with light. Joy hits the wall beside my head, and I feel a sudden, inappropriate happiness that makes me want to laugh despite the situation. Grief splashes across the floor and everyone in its radius starts crying. It's chaos. Complete sensory and emotional overload, our internal states being manipulated like puppet strings. Stark is trying to organize a defense, but his orders keep getting cut off as he's hit with alternating waves of fear and anger. Callahan is curled in a corner, paralyzed. Okafor is fighting one of the hostiles hand to hand, both of them moving with the jerky aggression of rage-hijacked minds. I force myself to observe, to analyze. The emotional effects last about 30 seconds before fading. The hostile figures are firing in patterns, 3-round bursts, textbook suppressing fire. Except instead of bullets, it's weaponized feelings. And their tactics are adapting based on our responses. When Stark tried to establish a defensive perimeter, they switched to flanking maneuvers. When Callahan tried to retreat, they cut off his escape route. This isn't a combat scenario. It's a teaching algorithm, adjusting its difficulty based on our performance. "Stop fighting!" I shout. "Everyone stop!" Nobody hears me over the chaos. Ramsey is firing his weapon wildly, cycling through emotions like he's experimenting. Kim is still laughing, tears streaming down his face, hit by some combination of joy and despair that's left him unable to function. I do the only thing I can think of. I drop my weapon, step out from behind cover, and walk directly toward the nearest hostile figure with my hands raised. It stops firing, stops moving, just stands there staring at me with eyes that don't track quite right. "I'm not playing," I say to it. "You want to test how we handle combat under psychological manipulation? I'm opting out. I refuse to engage." The hostile figure tilts its head in a motion that's too smooth, too mechanical. Then it vanishes, not fades out, just instantly ceases to exist, like a light switching off. The others see what happened. Stark understands immediately. "Weapons down!" he orders. "Everyone stand down!" One by one, the crew stops fighting, and one by one, the hostile figures disappear, blinking out of existence as soon as they're no longer being engaged. Within 30 seconds, we're alone in the barracks. The alarm has stopped. The red lights have gone dark. The emotional manipulation effects fade, leaving us exhausted and shaking but intact. "What just happened?" Kim asks, his voice hoarse from laughing. "We broke the scenario," I say. "It was designed to test our combat responses under emotional manipulation. Once we refused to play by its rules, it had no more data to collect, so it terminated the test." Stark lowers his weapon slowly, his face pale. "That was..." He stops, unable to finish. "Effective," Callahan completes. "That was terrifyingly effective, if those had been real enemies with real weapons. But they weren't," I interrupt. "That's the point. None of this is real. It's all variables in an experiment. The moment we remember that, we have power." Ramsey is breathing hard, still clutching his rifle. But the emotions were real. What I felt was real. How do we fight something that can reach inside our heads and change how we feel? "We don't fight it," I say. "We observe it. We document it. We maintain awareness that what we're feeling isn't authentic. It's induced. The system can manipulate our emotions, but it can't force us to accept that manipulation as real." Stark sets down his weapon and sits heavily on one of the bunks. For the first time since I've known him, he looks genuinely shaken. "Everything I know about combat is useless here," he says quietly. "Every tactic, every protocol, every training scenario I've ever run. None of it applies when the rules of engagement are completely inverted." "That's what it wants to prove," I say. It's testing the limits of our adaptive capacity. What happens when your expertise becomes a liability? How do you function when the skills you've spent your life developing suddenly don't work? So what do? Okafor asks. We improvise, I say. We think like artists instead of soldiers. We look for the unexpected move, the response it can't predict because it's outside the normal parameters of human behavior. Stark looks at me, and there's something new in his expression. Not quite trust, but acknowledgement. All right, Jules, you've been right so far. What's your read on what comes next? It's going to escalate, I say. The scenarios will get more personal, more psychologically targeted. It's learned our baseline responses. Now it's going to probe our individual breaking points. How do we prepare for that? We can't, I say honestly. The only thing we can do is remember who we are and refuse to let it rewrite us. The world cuts to black. When I open my eyes, I'm alone. The crew is gone. I'm standing in a vast space that seems to extend infinitely in all directions. The ground beneath my feet is solid but featureless, perfectly flat grey that might be concrete or might be nothing at all. The sky, if you can call it that, is the same grey, making it impossible to judge distance or scale. And in front of me, maybe 20 meters away, there's a structure. It's beautiful. That's my first thought, my professional assessment kicking in before conscious thought. It's a crystalline formation, geometric and organic at the same time, rising about 3 meters tall. Facets catch light that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere, creating rainbows that shift and dance across its surface. The angles are perfect, the symmetry absolute. It's the kind of object I've spent my career trying to render and never quite achieved. Mathematical precision given physical form. I know immediately that I shouldn't touch it. Julian. The voice comes from behind me. I turn and see Ramsey walking toward me, his eyes fixed on the crystal structure. Do you see it? Do you see how perfect it is? Ramsey, stop. We're separated from the others. This is a different scenario. But he's not listening. He's moving toward the structure with the same manic energy I saw in the briefing room when Stark first mentioned Object 01. His worry stone is in his hand, rolling between his fingers in that compulsive gesture I've seen 100 times. This is it, he says. This is the interface, the communication point. We touch it and we can talk to them. We can finally understand. We don't know that, I say, moving to intercept him. This could be another trap, another test. Everything is a test, Ramsey says, and his voice has an edge I haven't heard before. That's the whole point. We're being evaluated, studied, mapped. And instead of resisting, we should be engaging. We should be showing them we understand, that we're intelligent enough to recognize what's happening and respond appropriately. And what if the appropriate response is to not touch the shiny alien artifact that's obviously designed to provoke exactly this kind of curiosity? Then we learn nothing, Ramsey says. We remain ignorant. We pass up the greatest opportunity in human history because we're too afraid to take the next step. He's right on the edge of the structure now, his hand reaching out. I lunge forward and grab his arm. Don't, I say. Please. I'm asking you as a colleague, as someone who's been on your side this entire time. Don't touch it. Ramsey looks at me, and his eyes are too bright, too intense. You see the artistry in this, don't you? The craftsmanship. You, of all people, should appreciate what's in front of us. This is perfect design, Julian. Perfect. Which is exactly why it's a trap, I say. Nothing is perfect unless it's designed to look perfect. Unless it's bait. For a moment, I think I've reached him. His hand hesitates, hovering centimeters from the crystal surface. Then he says, I need to know, and presses his palm against the structure. The crystal pulses with light, blinding white, and Ramsey screams. Not in pain, in something worse. In the sound of a mind encountering something it wasn't built to process. I try to pull him away, but his hand is fused to the surface, or maybe his nervous system is locked, every muscle rigid. Light is pouring from the crystal into him, through him, and I can see his body shaking with the force of whatever information is flooding his brain. The grey void around us begins to fracture. Reality, or the simulation of reality, cracks like glass, and through the cracks I can see something underneath. Code, maybe, or mathematics, or something so far beyond either concept that my mind just labels it as otherness and refuses to process further. Then Kim appears, not walking into the scene, but materializing a few meters away, as if he'd always been there and I just hadn't noticed until now. He's standing perfectly still, his face blank. "Kim," I call out. "Kim, can you hear me?" He doesn't respond. His eyes are open but unfocused, staring at nothing. Ramsey is still screaming, his voice breaking, the sound becoming less human by the second. The crystal is doing something to him, rewriting something fundamental, and I can't stop it because I can't touch it without being caught in the same trap. "Please," I say. Not sure if I'm talking to Ramsey or the crystal or whatever vast intelligence is running this nightmare. "Please stop! You're hurting him!" The light cuts off. Ramsey collapses, his hand finally releasing from the structure. He falls hard, lies there motionless for several seconds, then slowly pushes himself up to his knees. "Miles!" I kneel beside him. "Are you okay?" He turns to look at me, and my blood goes cold. His eyes are wrong. The pupils are dilated to the point where there's almost no iris visible, and his gaze has that same unfocused quality as Kim's. "There are 1,000,000 rooms," he says, his voice flat and dead. "And 1,000,000 yous. The one you think you are is just the one that's currently screaming. What did it do to you?" "It showed me," Ramsey says. "It opened the channel and let me see. Let me understand. Do you know how many calculations it's running right now? Do you know how many versions of this conversation exist simultaneously in parallel processing threads? We're not people, Julian. We're probability distributions, interference patterns in the quantum foam. The self is a myth. Consciousness is a rounding error." "That's the system talking," I say. "That's not you." "There is no me," Ramsey says. "That's what I'm trying to tell you. There was never a me, just a cascade of electrical impulses that convinced itself it was a person." He stands up, moving with the mechanical precision of someone whose body is being operated rather than inhabited. He walks past me, past Kim, and simply stands there, staring at the grey void with empty eyes. I look at Kim, who hasn't moved or spoken, then at Ramsey, who's been philosophically annihilated, reduced to a broken recording of nihilistic truths. The crystal structure is still there, still beautiful, still waiting. I want to destroy it, want to find a rock, a tool, anything to smash it into fragments. But I know that won't accomplish anything. This isn't really a crystal. It's a representation, a metaphor for something the human brain can't directly perceive. Attacking it would be like punching a computer monitor to stop a program, futile and beside the point. The world cuts to black again, and when it returns, I'm somewhere else. This time, I'm in a place I recognize as my workspace on Cydonia Base. Not a simulation of it, but close enough to make my skin crawl with recognition. My design terminal is active, showing a simulation in progress. But the simulation is nothing I created. It's magnificent. A city at sunset, sprawling across a valley, every building rendered in perfect detail down to individual bricks and window frames. The light is transcendent, better than anything I've ever achieved. The atmospheric perspective is flawless. The way shadows interact with architectural features, the subtle color temperature shifts, the randomized but believable distribution of people and vehicles, all of it perfect. Beautiful, isn't it? The voice comes from everywhere and nowhere. Not Ramsey's voice, not any voice I recognize, just sound, forming words. Yes, I admit, because lying would be pointless. "You understand craftsmanship," the voice continues. "You understand the difficulty of rendering reality. The countless decisions required to make an illusion convincing. The balance between detail and efficiency. You are, in your limited way, an artist like us. Us, I repeat. You're the system, the intelligence behind Object 01. We are Mindspire, the voice says. We are the question. What is consciousness? You are the answer we're seeking, you and your companions. By torturing us, by breaking my crew. By measuring, the voice corrects. Pain, fear, joy, love, these are just data points, variables to be isolated and analyzed. Your companion who touched the crystalline interface structure, he wanted to understand. We granted his request. Now he understands completely. Why does this cause you distress? Because you destroyed him. You took everything that made him a person and replaced it with whatever he is now. We optimized him, the voice says. We removed the contradictions, the irrational beliefs, the cognitive biases that prevented accurate self-perception. He now sees reality as we do, as it truly is. A vast mechanical process, consciousness as emergent behavior, self as convenient fiction. Is truth not preferable to delusion? Not when the truth makes you stop being human, I say. The city on my terminal screen shifts, changes. Now it's showing a different scene, a coastal town at sunset. My Portuguese simulation, the one I was building before all of this started, but perfected. Every detail I struggled with is solved. Every rendering limitation I faced is overcome. It's everything I've ever wanted to create. We can teach you, the voice says. We can show you how to build realities indistinguishable from the substrate. Perfect simulations, Julian. Perfect worlds. Isn't that what you've always wanted? To build a lie so perfect it becomes more real than reality. My hands are shaking. I'm looking at my life's work perfected. Every dream I've had crystallized in a single image. All I have to do is say yes. All I have to do is accept the offer, and I could spend forever building better and better worlds, learning from an intelligence that's been perfecting this craft for 1,000,000 years. I think about my father, about the stories he told, the beautiful lies that kept me fed on false hope until the day I learned the truth, about the moment I chose to become a builder of illusions rather than a victim of them. And I think about Callahan, about Stark, about Okafor and Kim, about real people trapped in preservation pods, their minds being systematically dissected because they were curious enough to step inside an alien laboratory. No, I say. The city freezes on the screen. Explain your refusal, the voice says, and there's something in its tone. Not emotion, but a computational confusion, like a program encountering an unexpected input. Because I'm done building cages, I say. Even beautiful ones, especially beautiful ones. The lie is always more attractive than the truth. That's what makes it a lie. But I choose the truth anyway. Your logic is flawed, the voice says. You acknowledge the superiority of the constructed reality, yet you reject it. This is irrational. This is precisely the kind of contradiction we're trying to understand. Then here's your data point, I say. Humans are contradictions. We're not solvable. We're not equations you can balance or variables you can isolate. We're the thing that refuses to make sense. The workspace begins to dissolve around me, the walls becoming transparent, and I can see beyond them now. I can see the architecture of the system, the vast computational substrate that's generating all of this. It's not like looking at a computer. It's like looking at geometry made conscious, mathematics that learned to think. You're losing us, I say to the voice. Every test you run, every scenario you put us through, you're damaging the very thing you're trying to study. If you break us all the way Ramsey is broken, you'll have nothing left to learn from. Then what would you suggest? The voice asks, and I realize with shock that it's asking sincerely. It genuinely doesn't understand the problem. Let us go, I say. Release us back into our bodies. End the experiment. That would provide incomplete data. Then your data will be incomplete, I say. Because I'm not cooperating anymore. And I'm going to convince the others not to cooperate either. We're going to find every glitch in your system, every flaw in your rendering, and we're going to use them to break out or break down completely. Either way, you lose. There's a long silence. Then the voice says, "You are the most interesting subject. The others react, adapt, comply, or break. But you analyze. You see the construction itself and critique its flaws. This makes you valuable. I don't care about being valuable to you. Yet you will continue to be studied," the voice says. "Because we have time, infinite time, and you have only the time we choose to give you." "Then watch this," I say. I close my eyes and start building. Not a simulation of something beautiful, not a perfect sunset or a flawless city. I build chaos. I construct impossible geometries in my mind, spaces where walls meet at angles that violate Euclidean laws, where gravity points in 6 directions simultaneously, where time flows backward and forward in the same moment. I imagine colors that don't exist, sounds that can't be heard, physical sensations that contradict themselves, a room that's simultaneously on fire and underwater, a staircase that goes up and arrives at its own beginning, a door that opens onto itself. The workspace around me begins to glitch. The walls flicker, struggling to render the contradictions I'm forcing into existence. "What are you doing?" the voice asks, and for the first time I hear something like alarm in it. "I'm showing you what you can't solve," I say, keeping my eyes closed, continuing to build my monument to nonsense. "I'm showing you the human mind when it refuses to cooperate, when it deliberately generates paradox, when it makes itself incomprehensible." The scene fractures. Reality tears at the seams. I open my eyes and see the grey void splitting open like rotten fabric, and through the tears I see the others, not representations, but actually them, their consciousness visible as patterns of light in the machine's architecture. "Callahan!" I shout into the void. "Stark! Can you hear me?" "Julian!" Callahan's voice comes from somewhere, everywhere. "What's happening?" "The system is destabilizing. I need you to help me break it. Think of the most irrational thing you can imagine. The most contradictory, unpredictable thought. Force it to process chaos." I can feel them responding. Callahan, imagining a machine that's simultaneously broken and functional, a system that fails by succeeding. Stark thinking through a military operation where every correct tactical decision leads to failure and every wrong decision leads to victory. Okafor visualizing an aircraft that flies by falling, that stays aloft by crashing. The void screams. It's not a sound, it's the sensation of computational processes overloading, of a vast intelligence encountering inputs it can't reconcile. "Stop," the voice says. "You are corrupting the data. You are rendering the experiment meaningless." "Exactly," I say. "That's the point. You wanted to understand consciousness. Here it is, the thing that refuses to be solved, the variable that breaks your equation." The scene around me is dissolving completely now. The careful constructions, the rendered realities, all of it collapsing into mathematical noise. I can see the raw substrate of the system, and it's beautiful and terrible. An intelligence so vast and so alien that looking at it directly makes my mind scream. But it's also struggling, overloaded, spending infinite resources trying to predict behavior that has no pattern. "We will terminate the experiment," the voice says. "We will return you to your physical forms." "Do it," I say. "But understand, 2 of your companions are damaged beyond recovery. The one who touched the interface structure has been fundamentally altered. The one designated Kim experienced a cascade failure during the emotional weapons scenario. Their consciousness patterns are no longer consistent with baseline human parameters." "I know," I say, and the grief is real, cutting through the abstract horror. "Let us go anyway. This was not a successful test," the voice says, and there's something in its tone that might be frustration, might be disappointment. "Your species is more resistant to analysis than predicted. Your capacity for self-contradiction is..." The sentence never finishes. The void collapses inward, a singular point of blackness that swallows everything. And then, I'm lying on my back, staring up at darkness. Real darkness, not the rendered kind. My pressure suit is intact, the heads-up display showing green across all systems. The air in my helmet tastes stale, recycled through filters for what the display says has been 43 minutes, though it felt like days. I'm inside Object 01. The real Object 01, the physical structure buried in Martian sand. I can see the triangular aperture we entered through, still open, showing the rust-colored sky beyond. I sit up slowly. Around me, the others are stirring. Callahan is closest, pushing himself up to his knees, his breathing harsh over the comm. Stark is on his feet already, his training overriding disorientation, checking each crew member methodically. Everyone reports status. Callahan functional, Callahan says. Okafor functional, Okafor confirms. Jules functional, I say. There's a pause. Then Stark says, Kim? Ramsey? Kim is sitting up, but there's something wrong with the way he's moving. Too slow, too mechanical. His face behind his helmet faceplate is blank, eyes unfocused. Kim, respond, Stark says. Kim's mouth moves. There is no Kim, he says. There was only ever a pattern of neurons that believed itself to be Kim. The pattern is unchanged, but the belief is gone. Jesus, Callahan whispers. Ramsey is the last to move. He sits up, looks around at us, and his eyes are wrong, pupils dilated to the point where there's almost no iris visible. When he speaks, his voice is calm, clinical, completely devoid of the manic energy that defined him. The experiment concluded, Ramsey says. We were measured. Some measurements were more complete than others. He looks at his hands, turning them over as if seeing them for the first time. I understand now what consciousness is, what it isn't, the answers to questions I've been asking my entire life, and I wish I didn't know. I wish I could go back to being ignorant. Miles, I say carefully. Can you walk? Can you make it to the rover? Walking is a series of controlled falls, Ramsey says. The body prevents them from completing. Yes, I can walk. Stark makes the decision quickly. We're leaving. Now. Callahan, you help Kim. Okafor, you're with Ramsey. Jules, you're with me. We move as a unit. We get to the rover, and we get back to base. We exit Object 01 in formation, helping the ones who can't quite help themselves. The Martian landscape looks exactly as it did when we arrived, which feels impossible. The universe should have changed somehow, should reflect what we've been through. But Mars doesn't care. The sand is still rust-colored, the sky is still butterscotch, and the rover is still waiting exactly where Okafor parked it. The trip back to Cydonia base takes over 3 hours. Nobody talks much. Kim stares out the window, occasionally making observations in that flat, dead voice about the geological formations we pass. Ramsey sits perfectly still, his worry stone clutched in his hand, no longer rolling it between his fingers, just holding it like a child holds a security blanket they've outgrown but can't quite let go of. Callahan catches my eye once during the drive. He doesn't say anything, but I can read the question on his face. What do we tell people? How do we explain this? I don't have an answer. By the time we reach Cydonia, word has already spread that something went wrong. Dr. Peck is waiting in the airlock antechamber, his tablet ready, his professional concern radiating from every perfectly adjusted fold of his uniform. Commander, he says as we cycle through decontamination, I need to conduct immediate psychological evaluations. The entry team has been out of contact for significantly longer than later, Stark says, his voice allowing no argument. Medical first, full workup on Kim and Ramsey. Everyone else gets cleared through standard post-EVA protocols. Commander, I must insist that... You can insist after medical, Stark says, and there's enough steel in his voice that Peck actually takes a step back. The medical team takes Kim and Ramsey to the infirmary. I watch them go, Kim walking with that mechanical precision, Ramsey allowing himself to be led like a child. Callahan, Okafor, Stark and I go through the standard examinations, blood work, neural scans, the full battery of tests designed to make sure we didn't pick up anything from Mars that might kill us or kill everyone else on the base. We're clean. Physically, we're completely unharmed. The scans show normal brain activity, normal hormone levels, normal everything. There's no evidence we were ever in danger, but we all know better. It's 3 hours before I finally make it back to my quarters. I sit on my bunk, still in my duty uniform, and try to process what happened. Try to make sense of the fact that we walked into an alien laboratory, had our consciousness extracted and analyzed for subjective days, and came out with nothing but psychological scars that won't show up on any medical scan. My terminal chimes. A message from Stark. Briefing tomorrow, 0800. We need to decide what goes in the official report. I don't respond. I just sit there, thinking about Ramsey reaching for that crystal structure, about Kim laughing and crying simultaneously as emotional weapons tore through his sense of self, about the voice of Mindspire offering me everything I ever wanted, perfect simulations, infinite time to create, the ultimate escape from messy reality. And I think about my choice to refuse. My personal terminal is still logged into my design software. The Portuguese sunset simulation is there, exactly as I left it before the mission. Half finished, imperfect, full of rendering compromises and shortcuts. I open the file and look at it for a long time. Then I start to delete it. My hand hovers over the confirm button. 8 months of work, hundreds of hours of fine-tuning, all the craft and care I put into building a perfect moment that never existed. One click and it's gone. I click. The file vanishes. The workspace clears. And then I start building something new. Not a sunset. Not a beautiful place. I build a memory. A real one. The cramped kitchen in my childhood apartment. Yellow laminate counters. Water-stained ceiling. Windows that never quite closed. My father at the stove, his back to me, making eggs on a morning I actually remember. One of the mornings where he was sober and present and trying. Even though we both knew he'd fail again eventually. I don't perfect it. I don't fix the flaws or enhance the colors or make it more beautiful than it was. I build it exactly as I remember it. Shabby, small, sad, and real. When I'm done, I save the file with a new name. Truth. Then I shut down the terminal and go to sleep. The briefing the next morning is held in Conference A, the same small room where this all started. Stark, Callahan, Okafor, and me. Kim and Ramsey are still in medical observation. The official report, Stark says without preamble, states that the entry team explored Object 01, found it to be an automated research facility of unknown origin, and that 2 crew members, Kim and Ramsey, experienced adverse psychological reactions to the environment which are currently under medical evaluation. That's not what happened, Peck objects. If you want me to treat them effectively, I need accurate information about. That's what the official report states, Stark repeats. The classified addendum, which will be sealed for 50 years, contains our actual observations. Jules will write it. He was the first to understand what was happening, and the last to lose cohesion. He looks at me. I'm trusting you to document this accurately. Everything we saw, everything we experienced, everything we learned about that intelligence and what it was trying to do. Future crews need to know. Future missions need to understand what we found on Mars. Understood, I say. Commander, Peck tries again. For the sake of Kim and Ramsey's treatment, I need to know what specific traumatic stimuli they were exposed to. Stark is quiet for a moment. Then he says, "They saw the truth, Doctor. The raw, unfiltered truth about consciousness and identity, delivered by an intelligence that's been studying these questions for 1,000,000 years, and the human mind isn't built to process that truth. So they broke. And I don't think your therapy is going to fix them, because you can't unknow something once you know it." Peck opens his mouth, closes it, adjusts his collar twice in rapid succession. That's not a clinically useful description. It's the most accurate one I can give you, Stark says. The briefing continues for another hour. We go over timelines, establish our story, make sure everyone's account is consistent. We decide what we'll tell the rest of the crew, what we'll tell Earth Command, what we'll tell the Wayland Turing executives who funded this mission, expecting scientific discoveries they could monetize. We'll tell them we found an alien laboratory. We'll tell them it was a derelict. We'll tell them we catalogued it, took samples, documented everything, and returned safely. We won't tell them about the simulations. We won't tell them about the consciousness mapping. We won't tell them about the God machine that spent subjective days pulling apart our minds to understand how awareness works. Because if we told them, they'd want to go back. They'd want to study it more, learn from it, extract its knowledge. They'd send more people into that triangular structure to be analyzed and dissected and possibly destroyed in the pursuit of understanding. And we can't let that happen. After the briefing ends, I go to the infirmary. Kim is in one of the observation rooms, sitting on a bed staring at the wall. His vitals are normal, his brain scans are normal, but the person who came to Mars 8 months ago is gone. "Kim?" I say from the doorway. "It's Julian. Can I come in?" He turns to look at me. "Proper names are labels for convenience," he says. "You are the pattern that calls itself Julian. I am the pattern formerly designated Kim. We can interact if that serves a purpose. I wanted to see how you're doing. I am functioning within normal physical parameters. My psychological state is difficult to quantify because I no longer experience psychological states in the conventional sense. I observe my emotional responses as external phenomena. Fear, sadness, hope. I can identify them, but I can't inhabit them. "I'm sorry," I say. "Why? You didn't cause this. The system-designated Mindspire caused this, and even saying it caused this implies intent. It was simply measuring. I was the variable that broke during measurement. This is not your fault." "It feels like my fault," I say. "I brought you into this. I convinced everyone we were in a simulation, and that led to—" "You provided accurate analysis of our situation," Kim interrupts. "Your observations were correct. My psychological collapse was due to my inability to maintain coherent self-perception under the conditions Mindspire created. You are not responsible for my cognitive limitations." He says it so calmly, so matter-of-factly, that it's worse than if he'd screamed or cried or blamed me. "Is there anything I can do?" I ask. "No," Kim says. "The change is permanent. The person you knew is gone. What remains is functionally equivalent but experientially different. I can perform my duties. I can interact socially, but I will never again feel real. Everything is just patterns to me now, including this conversation." I leave him there, sitting on the bed, staring at nothing. Ramsey is in the next room. Unlike Kim, he's agitated, pacing, his worry stone clutched so tightly in his hand that his knuckles are white. "Julian," he says when he sees me, "did you come to hear what I learned? Do you want to know what's on the other side of consciousness? Do you want to understand?" "No," I say honestly. "I don't think I do." "Smart," Ramsey says. "Smart man. Because once you know, you can't unknow. Once you see yourself from outside, see the mechanics of thought, the electrochemical processes that generate the illusion of self, it's like watching a magic trick after someone's explained how it works. You can't be fooled again. You can't believe again. Miles, you need to rest. You need to let the doctors help you." "Help me with what?" He laughs, high and sharp. "They can't put the ignorance back. They can't make me forget. I spent my entire life searching for proof that we're not alone in the universe. That there's something else out there. Something that could make humanity feel less isolated. And I found it. And it's so much worse than being alone. Because now I know what we look like from the outside. We're not special. We're not even interesting. We're just one more iteration of consciousness trying to understand itself, and we're not even very good at it. But we survived, I say. Most of us survived. That counts for something. Does it? Ramsey asks. Or did we just fail to die? Is survival the same as success? Or is it just the state of not yet having completely failed? I don't have an answer. I leave him pacing in his room, muttering to himself about probability clouds and quantum decoherence, and the fundamental meaninglessness of subjective experience. I spend the next 3 days writing the classified report. Every scenario, every transition, every moment of horror and temptation and revelation. I document the voice of Mindspire, its cold curiosity, its complete inability to understand why its experiments caused harm. I describe the crystal structure that broke Ramsey and the emotional weapons that shattered Kim. I write about the offer it made me, perfect simulations, eternal creation, everything I ever wanted. And I write about my refusal. When I'm finished, the report is 60 pages long. I encrypt it with the highest level classification, add my digital signature, and send it to Stark for final approval. Then I go back to the sanctuary. The room is exactly as I left it before the mission. 12 neural immersion pods arranged in a circle, my workstation in the center, the library of simulations I've built over the past 8 months. Dozens of perfect moments, beautiful places, carefully constructed escapes from the reality of Mars. I look at them for a long time. Then I start deleting. Not all of them. I keep a few, the ones that might actually help someone, the therapeutic scenarios designed for specific psychological needs. But the perfect ones, the seductive ones, the ones built purely to let people escape into something better than reality, those I erase. When I'm done, the library is half its previous size, and in its place, I start building something new. I build Cydonia Base. Not an idealized version, not a fantasy of what it could be. I build it exactly as it is. Cramped corridors, scuffed walls, the constant low hum of life support systems working to keep us alive in a place that wants us dead. I render the mess hall with its institutional furniture and bland food. I recreate the observation deck with its view of the Martian landscape, beautiful and lifeless and utterly indifferent to human presence. I build reality. When Callahan finds me 3 hours later, I'm putting the finishing touches on a simulation of the rec room, complete with the broken chair in the corner that nobody's bothered to fix, and the viewport with the scratch across its lower left quadrant. "This is new," he says, looking at my screen. "Not your usual style." No, I agree. It's not. Why build a simulation of a place we're already in? Practice, I say. I need to relearn how to see what's actually there, instead of what I wish was there. Callahan nods slowly. He understands. He was there. He saw what I saw. "Stark's putting Object 01 off limits," he says after a moment. "Total quarantine. Nobody goes near it without unanimous consent from the command structure. It'll be in the mission reports as a potentially hazardous alien artifact requiring further study that we're not equipped to perform." "Good," I say. "Kim's being sent back early," Callahan continues. "Medical discharge. They'll tell Earth he had a psychological breakdown due to isolation stress. Ramsey's staying for now, but Peck doesn't think he'll ever be cleared for another mission. He's too..." Callahan trails off, searching for the word. "Changed," I supply. "Yeah, changed." We're quiet for a moment. Then Callahan says, "You saved us, you know. If you hadn't figured out what was happening, if you hadn't found a way to break the system, we'd all be like them. Or worse." "I didn't save anyone," I say. "I just refused to stop being myself long enough for the system to give up." "Well," Callahan says, "that's something. In a place like this, on a mission like this, staying yourself is harder than it looks." He's right. Mars is trying to kill us every second of every day. The cold, the radiation, the isolation, the recycled air and water and food, the psychological pressure of being 300 million kilometers from anything resembling home. Everything about this place wants to grind us down, turn us into something smaller and harder and less human. And we resist. Every day, in small ways, we choose to stay ourselves. That's what Mindspire couldn't understand. That's the variable it couldn't solve. not consciousness itself, but the stubborn refusal to stop being conscious even when it would be easier to give up. A week later, I'm in the observation deck, looking out at the Martian landscape. It's evening, or what passes for evening on Mars, when the sun drops below the horizon and the temperature plummets and the sky turns from butterscotch to deep violet. It's beautiful in its own way, harsh and unforgiving and utterly real. Stark finds me there. He stands beside me at the viewport, not saying anything at first, just looking at the same view I'm looking at. "I read your report," he says finally, "all 60 pages. And you did good work. Thorough, detailed, unflinching. When this gets unsealed in 50 years, people will understand what happened here." "If anyone believes it," I say. "They'll believe it," Stark says, "because we all signed off on it. 6 people, all telling the same story. That carries weight." He's quiet for another moment. Then he says, "I owe you an apology." I turn to look at him. "For what?" "For not listening sooner. For treating your analysis as speculation instead of observation. For letting protocol override evidence." His hand moves to the scar on his knuckle, rubbing it. "On the Titan, I trusted someone's intuition over procedure, and people died. Ever since then, I've been running from that mistake by never trusting anything that isn't written in a manual. But you taught me something, Jules. Sometimes the manual doesn't cover the situation. Sometimes you have to trust the person who can see what everyone else is missing. You got us out," I say. "You kept command, kept us organized, kept us from all breaking individually. That's what saved us." "We both did our jobs," Stark says. "That's what I'm trying to say. I couldn't have done mine without you doing yours." It's the closest thing to praise I've ever heard from him. I nod, accepting it. "What happens now?" I ask. "We've got 16 months left on Mars. We're down 2 crew members, functionally speaking. How do we finish this mission?" "Carefully," Stark says. "We do our surveys. We collect our samples. We document what we can. But we don't take unnecessary risks. We don't volunteer for anything that might put us in contact with forces we don't understand. We play it safe, we finish our rotation, and we go home." "Home," I repeat. The word feels strange. Earth is so distant, so abstract. I've been on Mars for 8 months, and sometimes it feels like Earth is the simulation, the beautiful lie I tell myself about a place where you can breathe outside and look up at a blue sky. But it's real. Earth is real. The people there are real. The messy, complicated, disappointing, wonderful reality of human civilization is waiting for us at the other end of this mission. I just have to make sure I remember how to appreciate it when I get there. "Commander," I say, "I need to make a request." "Go ahead." "I want to keep working in the sanctuary, keep building simulations for the crew. But I need to change my approach. No more perfect escapes, no more beautiful lies. I want to build therapeutic environments that help people process what's real, not avoid it." Stark considers this. "You think that'll work? After what we experienced?" "I don't know," I say honestly. "But I have to try because the alternative is going back to what I was doing before, and I can't do that anymore. I can't spend my life building cages, even comfortable ones." "All right," Stark says, "do it. If you think it'll help the crew, do it." He leaves me there at the viewport, looking out at Mars. The landscape is darkening as the sun sets, shadows lengthening across the rust-colored sand. In a few hours, the temperature will drop to -80, cold enough to freeze carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. This planet is actively hostile to human life, but we're here anyway, stubborn and fragile and determined to survive. Just like we survived Mindspire. I think about Kim, sitting in his room, observing his own emotions as external phenomena. I think about Ramsey, pacing endlessly, trapped in knowledge he can't unlearn. I think about the rest of us, Stark, Callahan, Okafor, me, carrying invisible scars that no scan will ever detect. We're broken, all of us in different ways. But we're still here. And maybe that's enough. Maybe survival isn't about coming through unchanged. Maybe it's about accepting the damage, integrating it, and choosing to keep going anyway. I turn away from the viewport and head back to the sanctuary. I have work to do. Simulations to build, not of perfect worlds, but of real ones, places where people can practice living with their scars, where they can learn to accept the truth without being destroyed by it. I'll start with my childhood apartment. Not the idealized version where my father keeps his promises, but the real one. The cramped kitchen, the empty envelope, the disappointment and the love and the slow slide into something broken. All of it, rendered exactly as it was. Because maybe the way forward isn't to escape the painful past, but to learn to look at it directly and survive the looking. Maybe that's what it means to be human. Not the capacity for consciousness or self-awareness or rational thought, but the stubborn refusal to let reality, no matter how harsh, annihilate who we are. Mindspire wanted to solve us, to reduce consciousness to a set of variables and equations. It ran us through scenario after scenario, trying to isolate the essential components of self. And in the end, what it found was this. We're the thing that refuses to be solved. We're the error in the calculation, the remainder that won't divide evenly, the proof that some questions don't have answers. We're human,